as well, so you can ignore that.
Yes.
Okay, we ready? Okay, we'll call this meeting to order. This is the City of Gig Harbor's Design Review Board meeting for February 9th, 2023. Start with roll call, Darren Filan.
John Affleck.
Brian Blackburn.
And Larry,
Here,
okay, and city staff.
Cindy Andrews.
And Jeremy Hammer.
Fantastic. Okay, we just have a couple minutes to get through the December 8th one. I had technical difficulties on that one, John, so that's the one you were all with, so I'm gonna take the lead on that.
I'd like to put on a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Second.
Okay, any other questions or comments? We can call for the question, all in favor?
hi,
Okay. December 8th minutes of that. And then we have meeting minutes from the, let's see here, January 26th. That's 26th. And now we're at, so. I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Second.
Okay, any other further comment? Call to question, all in favor?
hi.
Okay, now minutes. Let's move on to our agenda. Let's see, since it's the continuation, I don't know if we have to read through our fairness issues and such, but you know, I'll reiterate, this is a open public meeting. We will take comment at the appropriate time. I know we have some citizens from near the property, so you have an opportunity to hold some time. So with that, we want to continue on all, this is the Vita residence. It's located along Harborview Drive at 3824 Harborview Drive. And this is a continuation from our last meeting where the design review board had asked the applicant to bring back some visual perspective drawings to give us a better indication of what we might expect to see from Harborview Drive, specifically the sidewalk areas across that, since it's a challenging site. So we'll turn it over to staff. I don't know if we have an updated report, but we're just going to continue on and allow the applicant to present some new information.
Yeah, I think we'll just continue since it's the same project as was described in the last meeting.
Okay.
So for that, Mr. Freeman, you can take it away.
Thank you. I attempted to sketch up something here last Friday, and what you're seeing in your packet.
I'll go to my screen.
I don't think he has
Yeah, they get
this.
packets.
No, because we had nothing,
Right.
everything, nothing was added
It came
to.
in after the packet.
Oh, I see.
Oh, there.
Yeah,
It's up here.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, showing on the screen is good. Larry, you can see that?
I can see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what you're looking at on the upper, the dark black line which traverses left to right is the driveway. Approximately, that's high. It's difficult to get this to work in a perspective manner. So the driveway then goes far to the right, turns and returns back toward the house. And that's where our two walls initially begin. The first one, the lowest one, reaches a height of just 6 feet. The second one, which is set back and is higher, I believe gets around 13 feet or so. And traverses and goes behind the house, as you see on the left-hand side of the house. Those little sort of amoeba shaped things up there are supposed to be arborvitae. If you go to the lower sketch that shows the cross section on the site, you can see both walls and their the landscaping fronting them, if you will, with the line that traverses across from right to left is the existing grade. And you're looking at what is going to be the grades consistent with the drawings that we submitted for permit. The final grades are there. So it doesn't extend up beyond that upper retaining wall. And everything was left at that point, left alone. So. It's my belief that these arborvitae have spaced out at about 3.5 to 4 feet. Apart, and I've done this several times. Will sufficiently cover the face of that wall. You'll see a green sort of, I don't know, tapestry or something up there all year long. These are evergreens, so. That was sort of the best I could do to come up with a way of mitigating the impact of the wall's height.
And downhill of the house, I guess we can start asking questions now. No walls there, just gonna be landscape. And
That's correct.
that grade's all gonna be, there's gonna be some cutting and sort of regrading there below the house. right?
Not a whole bunch. It's if you go even further down on this sketch, you can see that it hold down, Cindy, just a little bit far to the left. You can see there is a little bit of a cut there and fill, but it's done. It's not very large
Mhm.
and it follows the grades. We worked on that one. I did first and then the civil engineer worked on it for months trying to get that to work. And so I think what we ended up with is the best result we could have hoped for. Landscaping, and I didn't bring it, I forgot to bring it tonight, will be roughly everything that you see from the street, the curb that's there on up the hill will all be landscaped. And the plan at this time is to create a landscape that has about 5 or 6 different colored grasses in it with mass plantings of grasses that make this very soft. There you go. That's it right there.
That's a lot of planting.
That's a lot of grass.
Are we talking like bunch grass or?
There's 9 different types of grass.
The kind of grass is natural, you don't have to mow, you just have to trim it.
Yeah, you can see it around commercial developments around Tacoma Mall. You'll see some of the taller ones and the smaller ones. But the idea is to create a band of color separated in 2 or 3 places with what is washed sort of river rock. It's probably 9 or 10 inches across, so that it is seen from the road in between some of these rows of plantings. They will grow every year. You go back in and you cut them in October, November, just mow them down, and it's a soft landscaping approach. It's one that, because it is grass, it will help stabilize the slope. Although it's not, the slope is not going to be worked in any way, except for utilizing some of that area for dispersing some of the soil that we've got in there, about 1,000 cubic yards. That sounds like a lot, but actually when you see it, it isn't that much. It spreads out quite evenly at about 6 to 8 inches. So that's what you're.
So in the landscape plan, is that maybe a little earlier plan? It's showing maybe more walls than.
Yes, oh yeah, that was not.
Yeah, that's what the original.
That's
we did- we
confusing,
measured
I
off
can
the
see.
2 rows and then they decided that, the engineers decided that that was
No,
not gonna be, because it's the same cost and this soldier pile wall would work better for that hill.
Is there a plan to do some plantings above the tallest wall?
yes, those swirls that you see, the curved lines indicate that would be planting up there.
Okay.
And again, it's only 2 walls. One 6 feet and the other maybe maxes out at 13 or 14 feet. There is no wall along the face of the driveway. It's just a graded area and that'll be planted.
I have a quick question. Is there a geotechnical reason for having the driveway planned as it is?
Geotechnical?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm curious as to why, and I would have this curiosity if I were planning the project for a house for myself, as to why we would have such a long approach to the driveway with that dog leg there, as opposed to coming in from the right of the house.
You have to follow the rules of the emergency vehicle evacuation. They have to be able to get ambulances up there, and in order to turn around and get in there that's the rule we had to comply with.
It's called an EVA accessible driveway. It's 12 feet wide. It has a maximum grade of 12%. And that's what we have to have. It's paved. And then an area to turn around a fire truck up there in that.
Right.
where it
I get the idea of the turnaround for sure. So anyway, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So for the landscape, it's basically the grass and arborvitae.
Correct. There will be other plantings in there. I haven't gotten to that level with it yet, but I soon will, and we'll have others off to the side and some around the house. But I think it's going to be a very interesting landscaping result. You drive by there and you'll see these sort of waves of grass, a little bit of a breeze, and it's going to be a very interesting sight to watch.
Is the, I don't know if we talked about it last time, the ready block, is it standard gray or is it a colored ready block?
This
or-
is not ready, but this
No.
is a soldier pile wall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it's
what is
timbers, and that
Timbers.
could be faced with something, but in lieu of that, I go, let's do the arborvitae, and it will conceal, cover almost all of the wall.
So that soldier pile wall, Dave, what's the pile? Is it steel?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's an H pile. Okay. And it's driven to a level of resistance. At, I think it's 8 feet apart. Could be 6, I'm not sure of this one, but most of them are 8 feet center to center.
Well, I think, the idea of a 13+ foot high wall, I mean, get a sense even in this room, this is probably what a 10-foot ceiling.
Yeah.
Tall, it's pretty tall. And,
Yeah, it is 10.
It's
yeah,
only 10 feet, but it looks like it's longer, higher because there's a slope. The second row.
Deputy angle.
yeah, so, arborvitae are, again, we're not usually into too much landscaping, design review board, but, they're suspects sometimes. I think deer like them to a certain height, you put those funny shapes out of them, but, I just think having some plantings on top, we've looked at this situation before in areas that are not visible, that are, for larger storm ponds and things like that, that are sort of facing the backwoods. And in this case, this is facing right out in front. And again, precedents established in the city, in essence by Public Works, when you look up at the roundabout on Burnham, where the range is, just past where the range is, and that thing is massive.
Mhm.
And we looked at that and asked for visuals and how the railing works and everything else. And so the aesthetics of the wall come into play, as long as it's, architecturally has some interest to it. That one is like significantly tall. Yeah, it's
huge.
I'd love to not see it that tall, but because it's really sort of brutal, but in this case, if we could get some landscaping and maybe even, considering the arborvitae or something else that, is an arborvitae to me doesn't seem quite like the most robust plant. They're an economical plant. They can do the job if they survive, They tend to be ones that can be finicky, and they have like 3, and then there's like some dead ones,
Really obvious.
Yeah,
It's very sensitive to being watered.
yeah.
I've got maybe 40 of them
Mhm.
on the perimeter of my site that are mature. They're 18 feet high, and it is a solid wall.
You won't see the wall.
What, again, even with the height of it, again, it's just this visual, but I think when we talk about this aspect of the manual, we're really talking about working with the grade. And when you look at the cross section, the house just sits down in the hillside, so I can't think that any one of us would suggest that you're not doing your best to work with the grade. You know, it's not artificially, extending out. It looks like it does that job well. It's just the aggressive nature of that first cut. You could start working back up the hill. But you sort of get these diminishing returns.
Yes, but you also have another factor at play here that is real strong, and that is the height requirements.
Mhm.
Where it can be taken is about where that arborvitae, the upper one is, and it can only be 18 feet above that point, the highest point in the buildable area.
Right.
Traverse right to left, and you've got to have a maximum of 27 feet on the downhill side.
Mhm.
So that house has been sort of mushed and squeezed to fit that envelope. And result, I mean, it's balanced, it looks, I think a lot of it won't be seen because when you're looking up the hill, you're sort of, it's now setting back into the hillside.
Mhm.
So it's not as strong as maybe my sketch is.
You're
Terrible
talking,
sketch,
what do you mean a lot won't be seen, the wall or the house?
both. I think you're not
On
gonna
street.
see as much of the lower wall as I've indicated in that sketch.
Is the highest part of that second wall on, when we're looking at this perspective, you have wall to the left and you have house and you have wall coming out and this is sort of finishing on the right hand part of the composition. So is that the highest part? Is it sort of emerges from the house?
That's the highest that I could identify, looking at the sketches that the engineers had provided. There's another spot maybe right behind the house that's equally as high, but the high point is about 15 or 18 feet to the north of the house.
What size arborvitae are you gonna plant on day one?
I'll buy the biggest ones. I had a house in Panwood and I had fences made out of that. And they're really easy to take care of and they grow really fast if you water them. I'll buy the biggest of what I can.
What you normally can find, I guess you would look at Costco, you can see them there once in a while, they're about 6 feet high. That you can get there, that's about as high as they come, but a nursery can provide much bigger and more robust product than what you might find at commercial outlets like that. So that's where I think you want to source them is in a nursery. So they've been well taken care of when they leave.
Okay, and so to understand one last sort of question about this height as it emerges. I'm not overly concerned about the height of the wall as it goes kind of around the house, because the house sort of like it's so tight in there. It seems like the house takes on, what you're visually looking at there, and the wall is not a visual element any longer right there. And if it's not really tall as it emerges to the left side of the house in this composition, then I'm not really concerned on that side either. So it's really just, specifically you have the 6 foot high wall, and there's some smaller ones that look like they're architectural, elements that are a little bit lower. So, I think that's gonna blend nicely. It's just exactly what happens, from the first wall at about 6 feet, and then, that visual step. So worst case scenario, Dave, is it, you said 13 feet or 14 feet? Sometimes these numbers get a little bit like fuzzy. So can you run us through those numbers as we are emerging from the house, just to kind of trying to get my head on the worst case scenario and what's happening and how soon it's going to start becoming a little more gentle as it moves right into composition as it's heading towards Harborview?
I would tell you that at the right-hand side of the house, the high point there, maximum is 12 feet. That's my interpretation of the engineering drawings that I was working with. And then it goes up to 14 feet, as I said, about 18 feet to the right, and then drops down gently and goes down to roughly 6 feet for a lot of what's up there on the right-hand side. So it starts to conform with the design manual more toward the right. Similarly, on the left-hand side, we have the lower wall, which is 6, and the upper around there is about 10 feet of height, and it drops off rapidly. I mean, the height of the wall drops down. There's the two walls. In fact, the upper one disappears somewhat on the south side of the house, so you can see it.
Yeah, I see. Okay, so I'm seeing,
You read them.
so if we start on the left side of the upper wall, all the way over, yeah, so tapering. So you have a top of wall, the next marker, top of wall 62 and some change, and bottom wall 58. So it's like, what is that? 4.5 feet, and then it gets to where your cursor is. We're talking about
9
Um,
feet roughly.
that's a 9 feet, 9.5 feet. And then we're getting into maybe 11 feet. Maybe 12, 12, almost 12, right?
Yeah.
Right in there. And then next one over about there, yeah. And that
Another
was
12.
another
Mhm.
12 or 11. And then that one there,
Back down to 11.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's
And then
6
that one
here.
is that 68, 73?
Yeah.
Upper wall?
Down to 62. That's only 6 feet
6
there.
feet there.
So that's a big drop there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's about 12-ish, and it's for a little stretch in that zone. Okay.
You're not grading any of the upper slope, are you? Or that's natural? Are you able to grade any of that to make it so it's not as prominent?
I'm not understanding what
So
you're saying.
above the retaining wall, is
It's
that natural topography up there? or you
Yes.
guys-
not disturbed at all. Except for the blackberries.
So you're moving all those, and that was gonna be planted with grass,
Yes,
but are you able to, I know we're already talking about the cut and fill. If you were to do cut up above the wall to be able to lessen the amount of the upper wall, would you be able to do that based on what the property is above it? Does that make sense?
well,
I don't, but the
you're
engineering.
really talking, it's an engineering question for, and I'm not able to answer it really.
The slope of
The 6-foot separation is required
That's what I
between the two
prefer.
walls, and that's given. We also have, as you, I'm not sure you can see it, but there's a setback line for construction. It's a little dash line right there, yeah. And so, even though this isn't the house, it is a structure, and we just try to keep it all within the confines of the building setbacks.
Okay. Right. Anybody else, do you have any other comments, questions? I might open it up to public comments.
I have none.
Okay. That's good. Okay, well, at this time, we'll, I presume we have members of, our neighboring public that maybe have some comments, so, once again, state your name and address for the record.
My name's Anna Alvarez, and this is John Boyd, and we live right above this property. My question is how tall the trees are going to be behind there. With, if they're 18 feet tall, Does that surpass the highest point of your house?
We're only gonna keep, the only trees are going to be that, it's not really a tree, arborvitae is
Yeah.
more like a hedge. I will probably just keep it, I don't want it more than 12 feet high, just to cover the wall.
We have it between our house and our neighbor's house, and it got really tall, and they topped it, so it opened up our view.
The arborvitae,
Yeah, they
Yeah.
topped it.
yeah.
But it
I would
can
not-
get super
No,
tall.
I know, I would not, I would just hire a gardener, just, I don't want it to get,
Yeah. Well,
Big
you
and
know,
all.
because that's our view.
Yeah.
That's a
but
selfish
otherwise,
question.
otherwise there's no other trees, I'm not planting any trees. I
Yeah,
want it to be all low maintenance.
Let's go back to the section through the site for a moment. And Cindy, there you go, the lower one.
That's the question.
that's.
You see the far right-hand line, the dark line there, it comes up rather rapidly, then starts to level off. From what I understand, and I've only stood up there once, crawled up there actually. And it. From your view up above, you probably won't see any of the arborvitae. You will see the top, the roof of the house.
Yes.
Definitely, you'll see that. But I think the arborvitae are gonna stay within the confines of that height of the wall. So,
Well, as long
as she
keeps it.
yeah.
Is it illustrated there? Is that an 18-foot tree in that back, or what do you have?
It
12 feet?
shows, I called it out at
I can't
11,
see it
and
from
it could
there.
be any number of different things. On the right-hand side, there's a dimension 11.
Okay,
11.5 feet.
okay.
Well, I think in regards to thank you for your comments. I don't know if you have any more, I can, if you do, let me know, I'll, add my own comments to it. Obviously, in the Deep Basin, we do have, height restrictions, very stringent, as city standards go. In this case, 18 feet, from maximum height from the highest, point. So basically, the way to determine it, they have buildable area, basically the setbacks. You can measure the highest point, the finished grade. That would be within that, you can go 18 feet, and then no part of the house, as you descend down, can be higher than 27 feet max. So it's, it really pushes the house down, and I would think that although we, as a DRB, have not talked about landscaping in regards to blocking views. We could write it in this, but I don't know if there's not really like covenants between one homeowner and another, that it might work in some subdivisions with CCNRs and things, but the idea here is that we would suggest plantings to visually reduce the impact of the wall's height, but we're not surely suggesting putting a bunch of plants to block the view and then be,
Mhm.
counterintuitive to the building height limitation to it, so.
I doubt that would be,
Well,
I don't doubt that would ever become an issue with the slope on that side.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is, I don't know if we, as the DRB, we have the purview for that, but I don't see in this submittal that would be an issue, and then it's. Kind of boils down to working with your neighbors about
Mhm.
keeping things trimmed down before they become a problem.
Well, we actually have a covenant.
we do have.
Oh,
one.
perfect,
Mhm.
okay, with this property,
Yes,
Davita's kindly.
trim the trees.
Trim the trees.
Well, then-
She did.
well, thanks, thank you.
Weeds.
Perfect, well, thanks for educating me on that, so that it shouldn't be a problem, it really shouldn't be a problem, everybody obviously are hedge-like, and they can be easily manipulated and sculpted as they grow, so. I think our concern is to reduce the visual impact of that wall as you're looking up, from Harbor View as you're coming around. I think the pile-driven wall has a different aesthetic, it can look a little bit, I don't know, like shoring to a degree, and maybe less like, something architectural, and part of me was saying, well, could that even be like some kind of an architectural fence or something else that's in front of it that looks more like the flavor of the house? Or it looks like maybe an extension of the house or something, because the walls, a lot of times they're kind of doing this irregular dance up on the hillside, and it gets to be that big, it almost looks like a physical, form of a house, especially with you're gonna have the pressure treated timbers between it, right? So steel columns, 6 foot on center, pressure treated timbers. and maybe less arborvitae in there, but, it might, I just have a feeling it might look a little like shoring to start with and unfinished. And, maybe I'm wrong, but, if we had, maybe some images of maybe some shoring like that, I don't know, what are you guys getting the same sense I'm getting?
Well, yeah, one of the pieces that I feel like is missing from being able to visualize it is some images of what will actually go in and what that will look like, because it's gonna be a substantial amount of that. Would be good to have a visual of, what,
I can show you on the phone.
yeah.
Mine
and-
doesn't have the horizontal piece of my friends. They have a similar wall that they had to put in their home and university place above the train tracks. And it's at the bottom. Just give me a moment to find it in my phone.
Once we look at it, maybe we can. We see it, and we can have an official
Mhm.
email.
Yeah.
They can bring it
Let's
up
do
and
that.
make
I
it a
can
part of the record.
Toss it up on there.
Mhm.
Oh.
Yeah,
I just sent it to you recently, so it's on your task.
I know,
So it's easier to find than all like pictures.
Yes, and then I kind of thought, a few of the commercial buildings, you talk about big walls and breaking them up. We've allowed growth of, not vines, but planting opposite spinach grate in the front of it. I don't know if anything like that could potentially help to break this up more too. I agree with the arborvitae comment, deer love them.
Mhm.
They do tend to split in the top also.
It won't have that horizontal, that horizontal
And being
with their
clear,
houses,
you can
that's all, that wall's a lot higher.
Mhm.
I think her wall's 18 feet or 20 feet or something high.
Yeah, yeah.
In her backyard. But it won't have the horizontal, you'll just have the vertical steel and then those timber things. And that's what it looks like.
Mhm.
You see it? Yeah.
I know
You
what
it'll look like.
Yeah.
That's what Soldier Power was.
Okay.
But hers is 20 feet high.
Know that to me.
Well, I think. Where we've had some tall walls too to kind of help mitigate that, again, we're in 12 feet, so if you get 6 foot arborvitae, you're already cutting it kind of about halfway. We look at plantings on top of the wall that can kind of like come down and creep over a bit, right, and kind of soften that top edge a little bit too. So, again, with that planting, I guess we could look at just providing some a requirement or a condition of it, say we'd like to see plantings, on top, to kind of help
Mhm.
from day one, kind of help mitigate that too, as the arborvitae are going up a little bit. And,
That big Burnham Drive concrete wall has those plantings draping over it.
I think we asked for those.
Yeah, they do.
Just as long as not English, right?
I don't want any ideas.
Blackberries.
Or blackberries.
The blackberries.
I have no-
Yeah. That idea is-
Their Scotch was really pretty too.
Yeah.
Scotch.
Invasive species.
Scotch broom.
Oh,
That was for imported 150 years ago into. Not still, is it Silicon? Yeah. Lady owned a big house and she came from Scotland. And guess what? It went to seed.
So back to the wall, it sounds like there's not much movement to be able to change the wall. It's set to where it is, where the building is.
Yeah.
The building scale, I have no issues with that. We talked about that quite a bit in the last meeting. Same for the entrance to the house. I personally have no issues with that either. It's really coming to disguising the wall. My concern with the arborvitae is the arborvitae also make a wall, even though it's natural. I do agree with Darren's idea for the cascading down over the top or something coming up to be able to help disguise it more. And being that it's not a concrete product, it's much easier to do something like that.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good suggestion. I mean, I would do the same thing. I think once we complete the landscaping plan and get all of the species identified. That would be a nice softening element on the top all the way along, or interspersed in there with some other colors.
Okay. So I'll close public comment unless you guys have anything more. Be kind of casual about this since it's being very hospitable. We've had others that have been not quite as is nice, so, okay,
Do you have anybody online from the look or not? No.
yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, unless that's the way of leaving. Guy, I mean. All right, we'll make note, Dave. How long has Guy been?
He just
Guy-
now.
I just-
you know.
All right, so you can listen to Guy, we're kind of wrapping this up. Okay, well, let's go ahead and we'll get back to the points here that we're looking at. So if there's no more discussion. So I've got the original staff report, so let's jump into couple of findings here. So the natural site conditions, which is, I think that's the first thing we're looking at. Which is under Article 3 site design. You can make sense of it, right? This is what we have, let's see, 1.6. Yeah, I mean, let me run through this real quick with me to make sure I'm. So on the architecture side, which is Article 4.
Mhm.
Site sensitive building design. So we have our criteria for approval, kind of jumping, on site for a moment.
Yeah.
Would
Would you like me to go through those?
real quick.
Okay.
The,
Yeah, so we have 5 criteria for approval of the design exception or exemption. First one, special conditions or circumstances exist which render a specific requirement of chapter 1799. The design may all unnecessary given the location and intended use of the proposed development. Second one is special conditions and circumstances are characteristic of the proposed general use of the site and not of a specific tenant. Number 3, the specific conditions and circumstances are not representative of typical retail, professional office, or residential type development, which may be allowed within the zoning district. Number 4, the requested exception is based upon functional consideration rather than economic hardship, personal convenience, or personal design preferences. And the 5th one, architectural changes in a project design as a result of the exception have been sufficiently compensated by other architectural embellishments, and site plan changes as a result of the exception have been sufficiently compensated by other site amenities.
Is there not a 6th
Yes,
one?
number 6, sorry. The requested exception will not result in a project which is inconsistent with the intent and general scope of the standards of chapter 1799 design manual.
Okay, and so you. So you basically have a conclusion, on that. I don't know if we get into every one of those staff analysis, but on architecture class, I think you were all in accord, in thought if you met those criteria fairly well, and it was modest in size. And there wasn't any reason to preclude it being approved as it meets the design intent. So your staff analysis for each one of these, we look at trying to figure out how we're going to compose our findings for architecture. So you having your conclusion based on the preceding analysis staff has found the applicant's request to be consistent with criteria. Now, we would need to have some findings, and then I guess we would use your staff analysis of those findings.
Correct.
Okay. All right, let's start go through that one as opposed to, um. We'll tackle the garage one, which I think we already talked, and then we'll go back to site. So I'm gonna make a motion that we, approve staff's findings and, there's some in regards to Article 4 architecture. That the analysis, the staff found the analysis, the request, from the applicant's been consistent with criteria set in the design manual, circumstances that be met, for the approval of design exceptions. I know it's probably lacks a little bit of some technical resolve, but I'm referring to the staff analysis for that in all sorts of cases. Okay. Second. We'll look for a second.
Second,
Okay. Okay, any further discussion? Comment or friendly amendments? Okay, we'll call for the question. All in favor? Aye.
aye,
Okay, so we passed. Article 4 on architecture. And the last one, we'll go back to the site. Lastly, but the easy one is the garage. So, 1799-520, the garage and front entry. And now this was just for design discussion. Did we preclude that met it prescriptive?
Yes.
Okay, we don't need to worry about it. Okay, so back to site design, which has in essence the same 6 criteria.
Mhm.
Okay. So. I would suggest making another motion to approve with condition the development of subject parcel has designed in a manner which is complete in the character of the area, and the proposed design exception can be found consistent with the intent of the general scope with the following conditions: that the pile wall, that the upper pile wall utilize cascading landscaping plant material on the upper part of the wall to help visually mitigate the height of the wall, as well as the arborvitae plants planted no smaller size than 6 foot initially at the base of the wall to help visually reduce the size of the pile wall. Is there any other before I guess I'll get a second on that and we can talk about it a little bit more.
A second.
Okay. Any further discussion or friendly amendments or things to add?
There, spacing of the arborvitae that in the planting then, is there?
So I think you said 3 to 4 feet. between each.
It's variable because
You
the
get-
stalk can be 3.5 inches in
Right,
diameter, and I'd say 3.5 feet is normal,
Mhm.
but you're gonna wanna do that on an individual tree
Mhm.
basis when you're up there.
In terms of coverage, is there any element of that that we want to consider?
Do we want it? Well, that's a good question. Do you want it to be dense enough to block
Mhm.
all visual aspects of the wall, or you'll have these steel piles? Do you want to have something that has a little bit of a rhythm with that? Or you want the wall to go away visually, and it's really more of a, green landscape barrier in front. And if so, then you're probably talking about, I don't know, 4 foot on center or something. I mean, we have to probably defer to the landscape architect.
Yeah, right.
But you don't want them too close together. You should
Right.
choke them out.
Which
Yeah,
will
yeah.
Survive.
So maybe a friendly amendment would suggest that spaced at a density that will visually block the wall, the pile wall.
Mhm.
At the recommendations of the landscape architect and their expertise.
For the health of the plants.
Yeah,
Yes. Okay, I like that.
yeah, I like that.
Okay. Any other friendly amendments?
I have to say, I'm uncomfortable with 18, 17 and a half or 18-foot wall there. I live real close to 2 walls that are approximately that height, and I'm sure all of you have seen them. And they're, you know, over the years, they haven't been mitigated by vegetation at all. And they're, you know, especially from the city side of the harbor, they stick out way prominently. I'm just,
Guy, can I, sure, I know you're coming in late a little bit, but we reviewed the heights of the walls, from the civil drawings, these, more specific, so that the lower wall, as you can see you can see the graphic on the screen, right? So-
yeah, kind of.
Yeah, the lower wall that has the arborvitae, you know, sort of the oval shaped plant in front, that's a 6-foot wall, so that meets the prescriptive requirement, and the one above it at its highest, or just a stretch through there that's visible, gets about 11 or 12 feet. That's as high as it gets, and then it tapers down to 6 or 4 feet at the end. So if you add the two together, obviously, yes, you're kind of talking about those heights. But it's really the upper one, I think, that we were keying in on. So it's not as dramatic as maybe we initially were thinking in these 14-foot kind of heights. But point
Yeah.
taken.
I mean, I think the visual effect will basically be an 18-foot wall. So that, I mean, that's what I'm seeing on the rendering, and that's what I see, you know, as I drive by these other walls. One of them is a split wall like this, and you know, the visual effect of it is the total, not too a shorter. It's the same thing, a shorter wall and a taller wall. So. And
Right.
it's roughly the same amount of wall, and it's, you know, it's you know, it's way prominent. It's the most prominent thing on this side, on the east side of the harbor. So.
Well, I think, you know, you make a good point. If you know, to talk about it a little bit further, if we allowed, in essence, you know, an applicant to come in and do 3 or 4 6-foot high walls cascading, they in essence could create something that's 24 feet high visually without any plantings in front of it. So yeah, I think visually that wouldn't be as attractive. So and I think in this case, trying to mitigate the walls with intended landscaping, I think is good. We have, as you pointed out, we've got a lot of examples where we don't have landscaping, you know, that's helping to soften those.
Mhm.
And these are challenging, you know, I get it. You look across the bay at the Pierce County side, and there are some monstrosities over there.
Can I ask a question that's almost sort of off topic? Well, not really off topic, but if the technology of the wall is, you know, if the engineers and the architects feel it's going to hold that hill back, why couldn't the same technology be used to wrap the house as a foundation, and then you'd meet the ultimate goal? You know, you'd lose the wall, you'd meet the design criteria on 17-192 and 17-218. It would seem, I mean, it would, if it's good enough for a wall, it seems like it would be good enough for a home's foundation as well. And then you could basically meet every design criteria.
Storm troopers.
Got grandkids here, sorry.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, Guy, I think this is a point taken, and, you know, maybe at the house, you know, it could possibly do that, but there's also, you know, a fair amount of property, you know, extending out, you know, in front of the house for vehicular access and driveway. And so at some point the house stops and you still have to deal with the, you know, the grade itself.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think, you know, the house is modest enough and it kind of nestles in. I think this is probably a more long-term, I think it's better to sort of care for the house with the wall being away from it. done projects where the wall is integrated within the design, and it probably would have to be something completely different than this. It'd probably have to be like a concrete, serious sort of retaining wall with a serious excavation in order to do that. But I don't know, I guess I'm leaning more towards these are the toughest properties sort of left in the harbor. And I think sometimes the manual was written to really intend these designs to sort of fit within a topography. And I think this really does that when you look at the existing grade. This design really kind of nestles in. It just so happens that there's some portions of cutting that a bit that just get fairly tall because of how steep that slope is. So. Okay, I don't know if I'm not trying to convince you, Guy, so.
Oh, that's fine. I'm listening. I just, and I also have concerns about the homes behind it. I mean, I guess if the wall doesn't fail and, I don't have that type of expertise, but I know that hill. I know they had trouble stabilizing stuff down at the marina, the Stearns Marina. Scanzi's built the marina. Yeah, I just kind of worry. I'm just a little uncomfortable with such a huge wall system there. So.
Okay. All right, so we got a motion on the table. We had a second, and we had some friendly comments, and then a friendly amendment to include some additional landscaping notes. So anything else on the motion that's on the floor? Okay, we'll call for the question. All in favor? Aye.
All right.
You can abstain or vote no.
I'll dissent. I'm not comfortable with it. So,
Okay, well, we want to take that as a no?
yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, but it passes as enough votes to pass. And so that will conclude those, in essence, two sections for the criteria to meet approval. And want to thank the applicant for taking the time to try to get some visuals for us on this. It sounded like it was a pretty challenging task. Try to something to help kind of give us a sense of what this is going to look like. We wish you luck in developing the property. Everybody's eyes will be on it. So keep that in mind. So when the wall goes in, if you can even possibly start to if there can be a first phase landscaping, this is off the record. This is beyond what we just approved. So
Yes.
I would just keep in mind that the city gets sensitive, its constituents get sensitive to dramatic changes all at once.
Mhm.
So you have to have thick skin a little bit and eventually get better. And, so just keep it in mind as you develop. Okay, we're just the designer viewpoint, so recommending body. We still have more things to accomplish. Okay. Anything else on the application? Yeah, what you need.
I do, thank you.
Okay, you'll have to wordsmith some of that, sure. Okay, so you're free to go if you want to, and I think we can just wrap up with a little bit of business.
Thank you. All
Thank
of
you.
you for your help in getting this passed. It was a really tough project to do, so appreciate your helping us.
Okay, so let's see. Schedule wise, next meeting.
So the next meeting would be February 23rd, and at this time, we don't have anything proposed for the 23rd.
Okay.
So I
Be
think,
gone, so that's a good thing.
good, 'cause I think scheduling date would have been today, so we'll go ahead and cancel that meeting.
Okay. All right, and then the 9th of March, is the one after that, okay.
9th of March, I will be gone.
So will I.
23rd.
Dean, and then I'm going to Abacus. So,
So I'll be gone too, so no meeting. We'll just say that now.
Okay. So no,
Well, we can't say that. I'm just joking, but
yeah, if an application comes in.
yeah.
Okay.
But so we don't have anything proposed at this time, but there again, it's still, we've got plenty of time.
Okay. All right, anything else for the good of the order? Okay. Guy, thank you for coming on board a little bit. You know, I wish you would maybe be able to participate in the conversation a little bit earlier, but is what it is.
Yeah, sorry to be late.
Yeah, well, we'll try to get you down here next time. So I know you have the history, you know. Especially down in the harbor. So your viewpoints are important to the conversation. So
Well, thanks.
appreciate that.
Okay,
Okay, all right, well, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been seconded. All in favor?
Hi,
All right, so adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
see ya.
have
Thank
a
you.
good one.
Have a good evening.
I'm really not. Next one.